Good afternoon to you. Mark Sott of HurricaneTrack.com here. Hurricane Outlook and Discussion time. It is the 29th day of July, 2021. I hope your Thursday is going well. It is certainly toasty out there across much of the lower 48. We had that derecho event, that big mesoscale convective complex coming out of the upper Midwest yesterday and last night. Tropics are generally quiet for the most part. It's going to get hotter in the southwest. The monsoon's going to dry up somewhat. We got a lot to talk about today. I'll try to condense it as best I can. And what's hiding behind that corner of me there? Oh, it's another 20. 2020 versus now. What's different? Why aren't we farther down the list? Or is it further down the list? Doesn't matter. Why haven't we used more? I mean, good grammar does matter. But anyway, why haven't we used more names this year versus last year? I'm not going to go into the fine details of it, but just a general overview of what's different between last year and now. Not that anybody is hopefully complaining that we're a little slower paced than we were last year. I mean, after all, I was getting ready to go down to Florida this time last year for Isaias, something like that. And remember, we all had to learn how to say that. And this year we're not even up to Fred yet, but it's coming. You'll see. All right, let's get on with it and take a look out there at what's happening, which is nothing in the Atlantic. In the Eastern Pacific, a couple of areas to watch. This is where the rising motion is currently favored right now. And until that abates and kind of dissipates, the Atlantic Basin is going to stay rather unfavorable. And that's typical. You know, we still have another almost 3 weeks to go until we would expect to see things busy in the Atlantic. That being said, we do have these two areas in the Eastern Pacific that should go on to eventually develop. But the good news for our friends along the Baja region and the rest of the Pacific coast of Mexico and Central America, nothing to worry about. These two systems are going to head out into the open Pacific and not be a problem. And even out in Hawaii, no problems there either. All right, so this is what things looked like roughly a year ago. This is July 26, 2020. I was having trouble finding the archives of these particular anomalies maps. They used to be really easy to find when you had the Noah Nesdis version of this, but you know, in the comments today, I mean, I'm pretty smart and pretty adept at this stuff, but sometimes I need help. If you know where to find the archives to this, I had to crop this out of my update from last year, the YouTube video, to even show it to you. So if you know where to find archival 5-kilometer NOAA Coral Reef Watch images, let me know in the comments or send me an email. You know how to email me, hopefully. Seriously, I couldn't find them. But anyway, all that aside, I cropped this out. And this is what it looked like last year, the anomalies. Look across the main development region through the Caribbean. Water temperatures were running, pretty substantially above average. A half a degree to a degree Celsius overall. We had this little cool patch over here in the subtropics. And interestingly enough, the northern Gulf was below average this time last year, but a big difference, we had this raging La Nina coming on. Raging's maybe an overstatement, but much colder, especially in the Eastern Pacific already, and this was getting well established out in the Central Pacific along the equatorial regions. And if we compare that to this year, pretty close match in terms of me getting the extents right. It's not that big of a difference. It's pretty warm in the main development region. The Gulf is warmer than it was last year. Got this little cool patch in the subtropics. It's warm in the Northwest Atlantic. But it is warmer over on the eastern side of the INSO regions. This is starting to really come to life. And so let's just go back and compare, leaving those areas circled, if you will, or outlined. Kind of interesting. Not that big a difference. It's not marked, as they say. However, it's enough to make a difference in how much rising motion we had in the Atlantic, lower sea level pressure overall, just a better impetus for things to get going last year than they are this year. And again, last year we were already up to the I storm, Isaias, and this year we've gone through Elsa. We're still waiting on Fred. But you look at this and you say, well, it's not, again, that big of a difference. However, you got to go beneath the surface, if you will. This is the upper ocean heat content 1 year ago, roughly, July 27th, 2020. And you see And let me outline it in white here. This pretty expansive area of noticeable upper ocean heat content, I'll just outline it here in white. And then let's compare that to where we are today, roughly. And we go back and forth, and you see overall, especially in the deep tropics out here last year, there was a lot more upper ocean heat content. I don't want to say a lot more, but any additional input of heat in the ocean makes a difference. And the Caribbean was certainly warm. You know, the upper ocean heat content was substantial. Pretty big difference here off the southeast coast. And Isaias was going to come along and take advantage of that last year. So these different subtle differences do make a big difference in the differences in between the two seasons there. A lot of differences there. Because, in getting into some of the physics of it, even just a little bit of added heat in the ocean, because it's so expansive and deep, is a lot more available energy to tropical cyclones on a wide scale. So a degree Celsius, a half a degree Celsius, a quarter of a degree Celsius, 1 or 2 degrees Fahrenheit, whatever you want to look at it, you wouldn't really notice that if you had a nice bath and it was 28 Celsius, about 82 Fahrenheit, versus 29 Celsius. You wouldn't, oh, you know what, this bath is a degree Celsius colder than it was yesterday. You wouldn't necessarily notice that. Maybe some of you would. But that's a small bathtub. The heat content in that bathtub is nothing compared to the upper ocean heat content of the world's oceans. And so a half a degree Celsius, even a quarter, makes a big difference in how much energy is stored in the upper part of the ocean there, the skin of the ocean, if you will, and then in some cases several hundred meters deep. And that gets translated into latent heat that gets released when these tropical cyclones come along. Those warm ocean temperatures do all kinds of things with moistening the lower part of the atmosphere, creating lower air pressure overall. The background state is more favorable. And that's where we were last year. And it's just those subtle differences was enough to tip the scales so that by this time last year, as I mentioned, we were already up to Isaias right here. And we can look and see just real quick when that came into being, if you will, its inception, July 28th, so almost 1 year ago. And it went on to go through the early part of August, and it eventually made landfall right up here in my neck of the woods. Where are we this year? Just in case you didn't know, we've only gone through Elsa. So, you know, it's different. But it doesn't mean that what is ahead is also going to be different in terms of the end result. The amount of storms matters on one hand, but then again, it doesn't necessarily matter. It's about where they go. And I know you know this, but I'm just refreshing your memory. You know, you might look back at last year and think, man, there's nothing that could match that. Well, maybe not with the amount of named storms or how fast they were getting named and all the records that were set. But you remember 2017, 2018, those were not particularly busy years with the amount of storms, but they were very destructive. Hurricane Michael, Hurricane Florence in 2018. 2017, of course, with Irma and Maria, Jose, close call there, Nate along the Gulf Coast. And those together gave us a lot of energy output. We call that the ACE score. And yet we didn't have 30 named storms. We didn't even hit 20 named storms in 2018 or 2017. And 2019 gave us Dorian, a very, very close call to an area where millions of people live, called Southeast Florida. It was bad enough for the Bahamas. But you get it, you know, the amount of storms and all the hype that generates on social media and on television and on blogs and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok or whatever. That's social media, I get it. It doesn't matter. It matters where what does form ends up and who it impacts. And we don't know the answer to that. We don't know how that's going to turn out. We could have 4 hurricanes. All of them could be very intense, and every one of them could hit a populated area. You just never know. So that's just a look back at where we were this time last year and a little comparison there. So what about right now? Well, pretty good monsoon trough off the coast of Africa still. Anomalous westerly winds coming in through here at the lower levels. with the easterly jet coming out in the mid to upper levels, mid-levels really. And, it's a little bit moist, more moist out there. It's not moister. It's more moist. It's moistening up. It's getting ready. The pump is being primed, if you will. But there's still a lot of dry air. You can really see that even in this satellite image. The edge of the Saharan air layer and these low stratocumulus clouds through here. Dry air abounds. It's still only the end of July. Climatologically speaking, we still have a few weeks to go before I would expect this area to become very active. And just while I'm thinking about it, 2010, let's go look at that real quick, all right? 2010 gave us a whole bunch of named storms. I think it was 19 named storms. We had Alex that formed on June 25th. Let's move me out of the way. And then we got to, let's just look at Earl. Earl came along at the end of August. So it took to the end of August to get to the E storm in 2010, and look what happened. We still rattled off a whole bunch of hurricanes, and none of them hit the United States, by the way. We got very lucky there. Some of these were pretty nasty. So it can start late and then just keep on going. Thomas, however you say that, that was at the end of October. So the 2010 season was quite busy. It lasted a long time. It was a lot warmer throughout the Atlantic Basin that year. The heat was distributed over a huge area. So, these seasons can start late for sure, and then they can really get going. Think about 2004. We didn't get our first named storm until the very end of July, and that was also Alex. I was there on the Outer Banks for that. All right, so tropics generally quiet. There's maybe some upper level energy. You can see these clouds streaking this way. This is approaching the islands over here, so maybe some instability coming into your area. Brent down there, get ready. Maybe some more lightning opportunities for you. And there's some tropical waves out here, but it's still just not a favorable time right now. Here's that big complex of storms that moved out of the upper Midwest last night, and it's moving south and east. And we had a little backdoor front that came through here in the Carolinas, and you can see that trough energy down here. It's just we're in the waiting period, and we know what's coming based on the science. And, not that anybody is rooting for it. We watch these things with a deep interest. We all understand it. And it just takes time. And it's coming. And I hope everybody's ready. Speaking of taking time, let's just look and see. I'll drag the slider here at Tropical Tidbits. You generally know what to look for now, hopefully, on this map. No areas of concentrated vorticity. Look at that huge envelope that comes off right there. That is a giant pocket of energy. A huge gyre almost in about 6 days' time that rolls off and heads out into the Atlantic. Really doesn't do much. We're out at about a week to 8 days plus. And just running this out all the way out to the end of the 2-week period just to show you. Still, by mid-August there, the 14th, not much going on. But there are hints here. Look at this onshore flow in the lower levels. This is 5,000 feet in the atmosphere. This monsoon trough is set up. It's still 6 days shy. August 20th is usually when things start to change, and it can be very similar to switching on a light. Right now, the upward motion's in the eastern Pacific for the most part, and a trio of systems might try to develop because of that. Good news is they all head out into the open Pacific with no problems for Mexico, so that's great news there. All right, real quick, I am going to get on a plane Sunday and head out to the desert Southwest. I realize that I missed most of the active part of the monsoon because I was on vacation with the family. Sometimes that happens. Family time is the most important time that you will get for most of us. Some people don't get along with their family members, and I understand that. I do, and it's very important to have good times with your family, so I don't regret that. It's a bummer that I missed the bulk of the monsoon action, but that's not the only reason that I'm heading out there. I have a deep interest in the desert Southwest. I don't know how to explain it. I did go to high school in Las Vegas. I went to the same high school that Jimmy Kimmel did, in case you didn't know that, and I don't know how many of you would know that. I was in high school in Las Vegas, Clark County, from 86 to 89. I graduated from Clark High School, and I got to know the West and its microclimates and a little bit of the meteorology of how the Pacific cyclones, tropical cyclones, impact the area. So I'm used to the area. I did a lot of hiking out there, visited the Grand Canyon, my hiking club, and so forth. But beyond that, as I studied tropical cyclones in college and got my degree in geography back in Wilmington here, I've always had this interest in why and how these systems affect the Southwest. Because here's the thing. When there's no rain, whether it's from the monsoon or just winter frontal systems that sometimes go down there and they drop snow in the higher elevations, those frontal systems do. When there's no rain, the desert Southwest is frozen in time. And I know that's a kind of a paradox since it's so darn hot out there sometimes. But geologic time kind of pauses when it's not raining out there. And when it rains, and especially when it rains hard, in these big events, these anomalous events like a tropical cyclone coming through, you speed up geologic time. You carve out these amazing arroyos, or these washes as they are called. You shape the landscape. You alter, the entire history of the area very briefly with that event that only lasts for a couple of days. And the monsoon, of course, can last for weeks. But I'm very interested in when we get tropical cyclones that come up out of the Pacific. Maybe they come up out of the Baja directly. Maybe they're well offshore and their moisture gets pulled in from a trough over here. Whatever the case may be, it's very fascinating to me. And it extends all the way up into southwest Utah sometimes. Maybe Southern California, certainly Las Vegas in vicinity. Up to Moapa and a lot of the Indian reservations that are out there, the Native Americans, they know about this. So, I want to go out and do some research on this. Talk to some local people. There's a few people that I've gotten to know out there over the years. And I'm going to do a couple of posts about it, kind of like some journalism, some reporting. And they're in the midst of a major drought, as you have no doubt heard about. Lakes Powell and Meade, very low right now. And it's a big problem because a lot of people live out there. A lot of people are moving out there. It's desirable. But you got to have water. And so here's the real conundrum. You need a tropical storm or a hurricane to bring its remnants into that region, badly. But with that can come the risk of flooding. So this is the one chance that you have during hurricane season from the Pacific to give the Southwest much needed rainfall. So there's that interesting paradox there, that interesting collision of we need the water, but we don't want the impacts. And so I'm going to talk to people about that. And I'm going to go to Death Valley. It's supposed to be about 120 when I go there on Tuesday. My good friend and colleague Mike Farrow, he's going to go with me. I'm going to take some equipment with me to measure things and document things. I'm going to take the drone and fly it around the lakes a little bit. As a earth scientist, as a geographer and a weather geek, it's fascinating. Even if the monsoon has kind of waned a little bit, there'll be a few thunderstorms out there that I can probably capture photogenically. So that's what I'm doing. I'm heading out there starting Sunday. Going to go to Phoenix. There's a person that I have known for a few years. I forgot about it. Named Jeremy that lives down in Sierra Vista. I hope to meet with him. And I believe he's an MSU grad from Mississippi State. And he works down there in Sierra Vista. So I'm hoping to meet with him. My good friend Paul lives over here in Pahrump, Nevada. And another good friend of mine, Tracy Wilson, who works for Channel 8 in Vegas. Yep, there's a lot of different people to meet and talk to and interview. And I'm going to go to the Grand Canyon up here and try to get some time-lapse of the night sky because I like the great outdoors and it is very relaxing. And just be one with nature for a little bit. There's just something about it. All that energy out there, I guess, from the sun gets released and somehow we absorb it. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people that think that, especially in Sedona. And so there's a lot of work to be done. And then we will see, just kind of wrap this up. If there's a hurricane that comes into the desert Southwest later this season, or next year, or 2023, or whatever, I will learn more about what to expect when that happens and be able to cover it better in person with some of our equipment by getting to know the area ahead of time. All right? So that's the plan. That's what we're going to be doing. And then when I get back, it'll be August, and you know what that means. All righty? All right. Don't forget, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, that's the main social media that we tackle, and we are crowdfunded at patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. Over 650 awesome people from all over the world helping to make this possible. And I really appreciate that. It has really grown in the last few years, and that'll really help us to be ready for when this season starts to become active, as we are anticipating it is going to do. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Thanks for giving me a piece of your day. I do appreciate it. It's great to have you on the other side of your device. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll be back with you more over the weekend.